The big starship Eternal Flame moved slowly through empty space. Its huge metal body shined under the light of faraway stars. Deep inside the ship, in a room few crew members ever saw, Engineer Tay stood quietly. He watched the strange being that powered their vessel. The crew called it a dragon, not because it looked like the fire-breathing monsters from old Earth stories. They called it that because no other word seemed right for such a creature. Its body glowed with energy that moved like waves under its skin. Its scales changed colors in ways that sometimes couldn't even be seen by most eyes. Thick tubes connected the dragon to the ship's systems, taking its endless energy to run everything from air and heat to the engines that let them jump between stars. "Tell me how it's doing," Captain Day said as he walked into the room. His uniform looked perfect even though the ship had been having problems lately. "It's stable for now, but getting weaker," Tay answered, pointing to the screens showing numbers and charts. "The dragon's energy has dropped 12% since yesterday. If this keeps happening, I don't want to hear what might happen." Captain Day cut him off. His eyes never left the dragon. "I want you to fix it. The Galactic Council needs our deliveries on time. The Eternal Flame can't be late." Tay nodded without speaking. The Kangpai Confederation had built their space empire using these creatures, beings of pure energy captured from the space between different realities and forced to power their ships. For hundreds of years they had stayed ahead of other civilizations this way, keeping the secret of dragon engines to themselves. But this dragon was dying, and nobody knew why. "There is one option we could try," June said carefully from behind her screen. As the ship's science officer, she knew more about the dragon than almost anyone. "We're getting close to the human outpost on Rigel 9. They've been asking to trade with us for years." Captain Day's face darkened with a frown. "Humans? What could those simple creatures possibly do for us?" "They say they have engineers who know about unusual energy systems," June explained. "And they're the only port we can reach before—" She didn't finish her sentence. "Humans have barely been traveling in space for 100 years, Day said with disgust. "How could they know anything we don't?" Just then, the dragon's body shook, and the lights in the room flickered on and off. Tay's screen filled with red warning messages. "Energy down 15% now," Tay said quietly. "Captain, we might not have any choice." Captain Day stared at the dragon for a long moment, watching as its once bright glow continued to fade. "Change course to Rigel 9, he finally ordered. "But this stays completely secret. No one can know about our problem." As the captain left, Tay moved closer to the dragon. For 60 years he had worked with this creature, but he had never really thought about what it was, where it came from. If it could think. The dragon's largest eye, it had 7 in total, seemed to follow him as he checked the connection tubes. Was that just his imagination? The official training said the dragons were just energy beings, no more alive than a battery or a fuel cell. But sometimes, like now, Tay wasn't so sure. "Hold on," he whispered to the dragon, not even sure why he was talking to it. "We're getting you help." The ship changed direction, its engines humming as it turned toward the human outpost. Most of the 300 crew members didn't even notice the change. They trusted Captain Day completely and never questioned his decisions. Jun joined Tay by the dragon's chamber, her dark eyes worried. "Do you think the humans can actually help?" she asked quietly. "I don't know," Tay admitted. "But I've tried everything in our technical manuals. The dragon just keeps getting weaker." Jun looked around to make sure they were alone. "There's something I found in the old records," she said, her voice dropping even lower. "When the first ships with dragon engines were built, they didn't run for very long. The dragons would burn bright for a few years, then fade away." "But our dragons last for centuries now," Tay said, confused. "Yes. Something changed about 80 years ago in how the engines were built, but those records are locked away. Only the highest engineers in the Confederation can see them." Tay looked back at the dragon, noticing how its colors had dulled. Once it had glowed with all the colors of a sunset. Now it was mostly gray with only flashes of purple and blue when the energy systems pulled harder on its power. "If the humans can't help us, how long do we have?" he asked. Jun checked her screens. "At the current rate of decline? Maybe 2 weeks before critical systems start failing. A month before complete shutdown." Complete shutdown meant the ship would drift forever in the emptiness of space. No power meant no way to call for help, no life support, no heat. The entire crew would die. The ship shuddered again as the dragon's energy flickered. Tay steadied himself against the wall. "I'll go prepare." "A report for the humans," Jun said, without telling them exactly what we're using, of course. "Of course," Tay agreed. The secret of the Dragon engines was the Confederation's most guarded technology. Other civilizations had tried for centuries to figure out how Kangpai ships could travel so fast and so far without refueling. After Jun left, Tay stayed with the Dragon. He had never been to a human outpost before. Humans were still new to the galactic community. They had only started traveling beyond their own star system about 100 years ago, while the Kangpai had been crossing the stars for over 1,000 years. What could humans possibly know that the great Kangpai engineers didn't? The Dragon's large eye blinked slowly, fixing on Tay. A strange pattern of colors rippled across its body. Not the usual flowing waves, but something that almost seemed deliberate. Tay shook his head. He was seeing things that weren't there because he was worried. The Dragon was just a power source, not a thinking being. That's what all his training had taught him. Still, as he left the chamber, he couldn't shake the feeling that the Dragon had been trying to tell him something. The eternal flame continued its journey toward Rigel 9, moving more slowly than usual, as its power source weakened. On the bridge, Captain Day sat straight in his command chair, hiding his worry from the crew. "Time to the human outpost?" he asked. 18 hours at current speed, the navigator answered. Captain Day nodded stiffly. "Maintain course." For the first time in his 30 years as captain, Day was afraid, not just for himself or his crew, but for what would happen if the Confederation discovered he had sought help from humans. The shame would end his career. But if he let his ship and crew die when he could have saved them, he would never forgive himself. In the engine room, the Dragon's energy dropped another 2%. Its 7 eyes closed one by one, as if it was too tired to keep them open. Only the largest eye remained open, watching the door as if waiting for someone to come through. It's someone who might understand what it needed. And the human outpost on Rigel 9 was nothing like the clean, ordered cities of the Kangpai. Buildings of different shapes and sizes were put together without any clear plan. Some were made of metal panels, others from parts of old ships. Captain Day tried not to show his dislike as he led a small group from the Eternal Flame through the busy spaceport. "This was a mistake," he said quietly to Tay. "These people still use burning fuel in some of their ground cars." A human man hurried toward them with a big smile. He wore a simple blue uniform with a patch that said Station Director. "Captain Day, what a surprise. We are honored to have the Eternal Flame visit us. Everyone knows it's the fastest cargo ship in this part of space. We need technical help," Day said flatly, not smiling back. "I hear you have engineers who know about special energy systems." The human's smile became smaller at Day's cold tone, but he nodded. "Yes, we have several experts. May I ask what kind of problem you're having?" "That information is secret," Johnny said quickly. "We need your best engineer, right away." The human thought for a moment, then nodded. "That would be Sue. She's different, but there's no one better with energy systems. I'll take you to her workshop." "Oh, I'm Engineer Hoon, by the way, the station director." None of the Kangpai officers offered their names in return. Hoon led them through the crowded streets of the outpost. Humans and aliens of many kinds moved around them, talking loudly and eating food from small stands. The noise and smells were overwhelming after the quiet, clean air of the Eternal Flame. "Sue's workshop is just ahead," Hoon said, pointing to a large metal box that had once been used to ship cargo. It sat at the edge of the outpost, surrounded by piles of parts and equipment that seemed to come from many different alien technologies. Inside, they found a small human woman with short, black hair that had blue streaks in it. She wore dirty work clothes and was moving her hands through a floating picture of what looked like an impossible energy pattern. "Sue," Hoon called out. "These officers from the Eternal Flame need your help." The woman didn't look up from her work. "Not taking new jobs right now, busy with something." "This isn't a job offer," Captain Day said sharply. "This is a request from the Kangpai Confederation." Sue finally looked up, her eyes narrowing as she looked at their neat uniforms. "The Kangpai don't ask for help, especially not from humans. We are making an exception," Day replied stiffly. Sue turned back to her floating picture. "Not interested." Tay stepped forward, worry making him forget his place. "Our ship is dying." This caught Sue's attention. She studied Tay's face for a long moment, then nodded. "Show me." Back on the Eternal Flame, Captain Day had ordered most of the crew to stay in their quarters. The fewer people who knew about the human on board, the better. Sue followed Tay and June to the engine room, carrying a large bag of tools and equipment. "Your ship feels sad," Sue said as they walked through the empty hallways. Tay and June exchanged worried looks. "That's impossible," June said. "A ship cannot feel emotions." Sue shrugged. "Maybe not the metal parts, but something on this ship is in pain." They reached the heavy doors of the engine room. Tay pressed his hand to the scanner and the doors slid open. The room beyond was dimly lit, with the glow of the dragon providing most of the light. Sue stepped inside and stopped. Her eyes widened as she saw the dragon floating in its clear chamber at the center of the room. "What have you done?" she whispered. The dragon's largest eye opened fully at the sound of her voice. Its body, which had been mostly gray, suddenly flashed with a burst of purple and gold before fading again. "This is our ship's power source," Tay explained. "We call it a dragon engine." "That's not an engine," Sue said, moving closer to the chamber. "That's a living being." "Of course it's alive," Jun said, confused by Sue's reaction. "That's what makes it such a good power source. It creates the energy within itself." Sue placed her hand on the clear wall of the chamber. The dragon moved its massive head closer to her hand. "It's dying," Sue said quietly. "We know that, Captain," Day said from the doorway. He had followed them despite saying he would stay on the bridge. "Can you fix it?" Sue turned to look at him, her eyes hard with anger. "Fix it? You've imprisoned a conscious being and you're draining its life away. It's not broken. It's being killed." "We've used dragon engines for hundreds of years without problems," Day said coldly. "This is a technical issue, not a moral one." Sue shook her head and turned back to the dragon. "How long has this one been powering your ship?" "This dragon has been with the Eternal Flame for 63 years, Tay answered. 63 years, Sue repeated softly. "Trapped here, being drained, with no way to communicate." She looked at the tubes and wires connected to the dragon's body. "These connection points are inflamed. They're hurting it." "The dragon doesn't feel pain," June said. "Our scientists have proven this." Sue laughed without humor. "Your scientists are wrong. It feels everything." She opened her bag and began taking out equipment. "I need to connect with it directly. My neural link can—" "Absolutely not," Day interrupted. "The dragon's mind is kept separate from the ship's systems for safety. Direct mental contact would be dangerous." "For who?" Sue asked. "For the dragon or for you?" Tay stepped between them. "The dragon's energy runs all the important systems on the ship. If it dies, 300 crew members die with it. Whatever you think about our methods, those lives matter." Sue looked at Tay for a long moment, then nodded. "I'll help. But I work alone. Your engineers can watch from up there." She pointed to the observation platform above the engine room. "You'll be watched at all times," Day insisted. "Fine," Sue agreed. "Now please leave so I can concentrate." After the captain and Jun left, Tay stayed behind to help Sue set up her equipment. He watched as she placed a strange metal ring around the dragon's chamber. "What is that?" he asked. Neural interface amplifier, Sue explained, not looking up from her work. Your dragon is tired, not sick. It's been powering your ship for how long without rest? 63 years, Tay repeated. 63 years without stopping, without talking to anyone, without freedom, Sue said, shaking her head. Wouldn't you be tired too? Before Tay could answer, the dragon's colors suddenly became brighter. All 7 of its eyes opened fully, focusing on Sue as she worked. It knows you're trying to help, Tay said, surprised. Of course it knows. It's smarter than all of us, Sue replied. She finished setting up her equipment and took a small metal circle from her bag. This goes on my head. It will let me talk to the dragon directly. Their kind doesn't use words, they communicate with energy patterns and colors. Is it safe? Tay asked, worried. Sue gave him a small smile. Probably not, but it's the only way. She put the circle on her head and pressed a button on her wrist. Controller. Immediately, the dragon's body lit up with brilliant colors that Tay had never seen before. The lights in the engine room flared so bright that Tay had to shield his eyes. What's happening? Captain Day's voice came through the speaker system. Tay checked the readings on the nearest screen and gasped. The dragon's energy output just doubled. It's higher than our records have ever shown. Sue stood perfectly still, her eyes closed, as waves of color moved between her and the dragon. The metal circle on her head glowed with the same colors. She's talking to it, Tay whispered in wonder. She's actually talking to the dragon. The ship's engines roared to life and the eternal flame surged forward with speed it hadn't had in years. Throughout the ship, systems that had been running at reduced power suddenly worked better than ever before. But in the engine room, Sue collapsed to the floor, the connection with the dragon broken. The dragon's colors faded back to a steady, pulsing blue. Not as bright as during the connection, but much healthier than the gray it had been before. Tay rushed to Sue's side. She was breathing, but unconscious. He called for a medical team, then looked up at the dragon. For the first time, he saw it clearly, not as a power source or an engine part, but as a living, thinking creature. And it was looking back at him with its 7 eyes, seeing him too. What have we been doing all these years? Tay asked himself as the medical team arrived to take Sue away. The dragon blinked its eyes one after another in a pattern that almost seemed like an answer. They used a dragon to power their ship. Then a human-fixed Sue woke up in the ship's medical room. The white walls and bright lights hurt her eyes. She tried to sit up but felt dizzy. Stay still, a voice said. It was June, the science officer. You've been unconscious for 3 hours. Sue's head ached where the neural interface had connected to her mind. But more than that, her thoughts felt different. New ideas and feelings that weren't hers moved through her mind. The dragon, Sue said, her voice rough. I need to get back to the engine room. Captain Day wants to speak with you first, June replied, checking Sue's vital signs on a screen. He's not happy. As if her words had summoned him, the door slid open and Captain Day walked in. His face was hard and angry. 2 security officers followed him. What did you do to my ship? Day demanded. Sue managed to sit up despite the dizziness. I helped your dragon, and now it's helping your ship. The weapon systems are offline, Day said coldly. Defensive screens are working at minimum levels. The dragon is refusing to power those systems. She, Sue corrected. Not it. Her name is Yuri. Day's eyes narrowed. You named our engine? I didn't name her. That's her name. She told me. Sue rubbed her temples, trying to ease the headache. She's been trying to tell you for 63 years, but you never listened. Tay entered the medical room carrying a data tablet. He looked tired but excited. Captain, you need to see this, he said, holding out the tablet. The ship's efficiency has increased by 23%. Life support, navigation, FTL drive, everything except weapons is working better than ever before. And our weapons? Tay asked. Still offline, Tay admitted. But the dragon, Yuri, is communicating through the ship's system somehow. A screen on the wall of the medical room suddenly lit up. Patterns of color swirled across it, forming shapes that almost looked like writing. "She's learning how to talk to you," Sue explained. "In the 63 years you've had her powering your ship, did you ever once try to talk to her?" "It's an energy source, not a conversation partner," Day said, but his voice had less certainty now. Sue swung her legs off the bed and stood up carefully. "Take me back to the engine room. I can help her communicate better." "You've done enough damage," Dee began, but Tay interrupted. "Captain, with respect, our ship is running better than it has in years. Maybe we should listen to Sue." Day looked at the screen where the colors continued to form and reform. "Fine, but security will escort you." Back in the engine room, Sue approached the dragon's chamber. Yuri's colors brightened when she saw Sue, swirling in what looked almost like happiness. "Hello again, friend," Sue said softly, placing her hand on the clear wall. The screen near the chamber lit up with colors, forming more distinct patterns now. "She's creating a language you can understand," Sue explained to Tay, who stood nearby, "based on your ship's computer language, but modified so she can use it." "How do you know that?" Jun asked, watching from a safe distance. Sue tapped her head. "We're still connected a little. The neural link created a bond." She turned to Captain Tay. "She doesn't want to stop powering your ship. She just wants to be treated as a living being, not a machine." "This is ridiculous," Day said. "Next, you'll tell me we need to give her time off and pay her wages." The colors on the screen flashed bright red before returning to a calmer blue pattern. "She doesn't like your tone," Sue said, not hiding a small smile. "Captain," Tay said, carefully, "what if Sue is right? What if dragons are fully conscious beings? It would change everything about how we use them." "The Confederation has used dragon engines for centuries," Day replied. "Are you suggesting our entire civilization is built on—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "Slavery." Sue provided the word. "Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying." June had been studying the data from when Sue connected with Yuri. "The energy readings during your connection were off the charts," she said. If Yuri, was cooperating rather than just being used, our ships could be even more powerful." "But she's refusing to power our weapons," Day pointed out. "Because you've been hurting her," Sue said. "The connection points where you've attached your energy collectors are painful. I can show you how to modify them to be more comfortable. And you need to give her rest periods. Let her consciousness roam free sometimes." "Free?" "She could escape," Dai said. The screen flashed again, patterns forming faster now. "She doesn't want to escape," Sue translated. "Dragons naturally travel through space. They enjoy it. She's willing to help power your ship if you treat her well and ask for her help instead of just taking it." Tay had been quietly studying the patterns on the screen. I think I'm starting to understand some of this," he said slowly. "This pattern here appears when we talk about the ship, and this one when we mention Yuri." Sue nodded. "She's a fast learner, and she's had 63 years to study your language and systems." "If what you're saying is true," June said thoughtfully, "then every ship in the Confederation fleet has a sentient being powering it, a being that might be suffering." The weight of that thought filled the room with heavy silence. Day paced back and forth, his face troubled. "The High Council would never accept this. The dragon engines are the foundation of our power in the galaxy. Your power is built on suffering," Sue said simply. "But it doesn't have to be that way. You could have partnerships with these beings instead of enslaving them." The colors on the screen formed a new pattern, one they hadn't seen before. "What's she saying now?" Tay asked. Sue studied the pattern. "She's saying she can contact other dragons. They're all connected somehow, across space. They can communicate with each other." Day stopped pacing. "Are you telling me the dragons in our other ships know what's happening here?" "Not yet," Sue said. "But Yuri can tell them. She's asking if she should." The implications hung in the air. If all the dragons in the Confederation fleet learned they could resist, refuse to power weapons, or demand better treatment, it would change everything, June whispered. Day's face hardened. This cannot leave this ship. The Confederation would see this as treason. It's too late for that, Sue said. Yuri has already reached out to the nearest dragon on a ship called the Swift Justice. They're talking right now. As if to confirm her words, the ship's communication system activated on its own. A message appeared on the main screen. Unusual energy patterns detected from Swift Justice. Requesting information. It's starting, Sue said quietly. Change is coming whether you want it or not. Tay looked at the dragon, at Yuri, floating in her chamber. Her colors were bright and clear now, all 7 eyes open and alert. She no longer looked like a dying creature. Captain, Tay said, I think we need to embrace this change. If the dragons are willing to work with us rather than just being used by us, our ships could be even more powerful. But we need to move fast, before the Confederation realizes what's happening. Tay was silent for a long moment, looking from the dragon to the message on the screen to the small human woman who had changed everything in just a few hours. What do you suggest? He finally asked. Susu smiled. First we make Yuri comfortable, then we start talking to her, really talking, and then we plan how to free every dragon in your fleet without starting a revolution. The screen filled with bright, swirling colors that needed no translation. Yuri was happy. Over the next 3 days, the crew of the Eternal Flame watched in amazement as Sue worked with Yuri. The human engineer spent hours in the engine room, sometimes talking to the dragon, sometimes sitting quietly with her eyes closed as they communicated through the neural link. Tay had become Sue's main helper. He learned to read some of Yuri's color patterns and helped redesign the energy collection systems to be more comfortable for her. These connection points have been hurting her for decades, Sue explained as they removed one of the thick tubes from Yuri's side. Imagine having needles stuck into your skin for 60 years. Tay felt sick as he looked at the old connection point. The dragon's scales were dull and damaged around it. I didn't know, he said quietly. None of us knew. Because no one ever asked, Sue replied, but her voice was kind. Your people saw something powerful and thought only about how to use that power, not about where it came from. With June's help, they created new connection points that sat gently on Yuri's scales instead of pushing into her body. The new connections couldn't take as much energy at once, but Yuri gave her power more freely now, making the ship run even better than before. Captain Day had ordered everyone to continue their normal duties. Only a small group knew the truth about Yuri. The rest of the crew just knew that the ship was running better after some engine modifications, but they couldn't keep the secret forever. On the 4th day, a message came from Confederation Command. Captain Day, this is Admiral Gill, said the stern face on the communication screen. We've received reports of unusual energy patterns from your ship and the Swift Justice. Explain immediately. Day kept his face calm. We've made some modifications to our engine systems, Admiral. The results have been very positive. The Eternal Flame is running 25% more efficiently now. What kind of modifications? The Admiral demanded. Technical details are being prepared in a report, Day said smoothly. But I believe these changes could benefit the entire fleet. The Admiral's eyes narrowed. Our sensors indicate your weapons. Systems have been offline for 4 days. Why? Day had practiced his answer for this question. We're recalibrating the weapons to work with the new energy flow. Safety precautions. We're sending an inspection team, the Admiral said. They will arrive in 2 days. Have all your data ready. The screen went dark. Day immediately called Sue, Tai, and Jun to his private meeting room. We have 2 days, he told them. The inspection team will discover everything. Can we hide Yuri somehow? Jun asked. Make it look like we're using a standard dragon engine? Sue shook her head. Yuri won't go back to pretending to be just an engine, and the other dragons are waking up too. The Swift Justice reported their dragon is now refusing to power weapons as well. How many ships has Yuri contacted? Day asked. 7 so far, Sue said. The closest ones. But those dragons are reaching out to others. Tay had been quiet, thinking. What if we don't hide anything, he finally said. What if we show them how much better the ship runs with Yuri as a partner, rather than just a power source? The Confederation built its power on controlling the dragons, Day said. They won't give that up easily. But what if they could have even more power, Sue suggested. Yuri has shown us she can give much more energy when she chooses to. What if all the dragons did that? They discussed options for hours. By the end, they had a plan. It wasn't perfect, but it was their best chance. The next day, Sue sat cross-legged on the floor of the engine room, her neural interface connecting her mind with Yuri's. Their communication had become easier with practice. "Are you ready?" Sue asked. Silently, Yuri's response came as a wave of colors and feelings in Sue's mind. Determination, readiness, a touch of fear. "I'll be with you the whole time," Sue promised, "and we'll have help." The plan was risky. The inspection team would arrive tomorrow. Instead of hiding what they had discovered, they would demonstrate it. Show the power of working with the dragons as partners, not slaves. But they needed help from the other dragons. Tay entered the engine room and sat down beside Sue. "How's it going?" "She's reaching out to the others now," Sue said, her eyes still closed. "It's harder at such long distances." Tay looked up at the dragon floating in her chamber. Yuri's colors pulsed and shifted as she concentrated on connecting with her kind across space. "Why are you helping us?" Tay asked Sue suddenly. "The Kangpai have never been kind to humans. We've looked down on your people since you joined the galactic community." Sue opened her eyes and smiled a little. "I'm not helping the Kangpai. I'm helping Yuri. And if that means changing how your people think about dragons, about power, about partnership instead of control, then that helps everyone, doesn't it?" Before Tay could answer, Yuri's colors flared brightly. The screen on the wall lit up with patterns more complex than they had seen before. "What is she saying?" Tay asked. Sue's face showed wonder and excitement. "The other dragons have agreed. All of them. When the inspection team arrives, every dragon in range, 13 ships will show their power. They'll all boost their energy output at the same time, while refusing to power weapons." 13 ships suddenly changing behavior at once, Tay said. "The Confederation won't be able to ignore that." "No, they won't," Sue agreed. "But will they listen, or will they fight back?" Captain Day and June joined them in the engine room to hear the news. 13 ships is impressive, Day said, "but the Confederation has hundreds." "It's a start," Sue replied. "And once the dragons learn they can communicate, that they can resist, it could lead to rebellion across the fleet," Day finished. "The Confederation might see this as an attack." "Then we need to show them it's an opportunity instead," June said. She had been working on data from the past few days. "Look at these efficiency numbers. Even without powering weapons, Yuri is making this ship faster and more energy efficient than ever before. Imagine a fleet of ships working in true partnership with dragons." "The inspection team arrives at 0800 tomorrow," Day said. "We'll proceed with the plan, but be prepared for them to react badly." The meeting ended, and the others left to prepare. Tay stayed behind, watching as Sue reconnected with Yuri. The idea that had been growing in his mind for days finally became clear. The Kangpai had built their civilization on taking power from others. The dragons, smaller species, even keeping humans at a distance. But what if real strength came from working together? From partnership instead of control? It went against everything he had been taught. The Kangpai were meant to lead, to rule, to take what they needed to stay on top. But looking at Yuri now, healthy, bright, and willingly giving her power to help the ship, Tay wondered if they had been wrong all along. "We'll make this right," he promised the dragon. "Whatever happens tomorrow, we'll start to make this right." Yuri's colors shifted to a warm, gentle purple that Tay had learned meant agreement and hope. Tomorrow would change everything. For the ship, for the dragons, and maybe for the entire Confederation. They used a dragon to power their ship, then a human fixed. The inspection team arrived exactly at 800. 3 high-ranking Kangpai officers stepped off their small shuttle into the docking bay of the Eternal Flame. Captain Day greeted them with perfect politeness, but everyone could feel the tension. "Senior Inspector Han," Day said with a small bow. "Welcome aboard the Eternal Flame." Inspector Han was tall and thin with cold eyes that missed nothing. "Captain Day, Admiral Gill is concerned about the reports from your ship. We will begin our inspection immediately." "Of course," Day agreed. "But first I'd like to introduce you to a special consultant who has been helping us improve our engine systems. This is Engineer Sue, from the human outpost on Rigel 9. Han's eyes narrowed as he saw Sue standing beside Tay. "A human? Working on our proprietary technology? This is highly irregular, Captain." "The results speak for themselves," Day said smoothly. "Our efficiency has increased by more than 25%. I believe this could benefit the entire fleet." "We'll see," Han said. "Take us to the engine room." As they walked through the ship, Tay noticed Sue touching her temple where the neural link connected her to Yuri. She was communicating with the dragon, making sure everything was ready. The door to the engine room slid open. The three inspectors stopped in shock when they saw Yuri. The dragon was glowing with bright clear colors, all 7 eyes open and alert. The energy collection tubes had been replaced with the new design that sat gently on her scales. "What have you done?" Inspector Han demanded. "These modifications are not authorized." "We've improved the system," Day explained. The dragon engine," Han corrected sharply. "Yuri," Sue said clearly. "Her name is Yuri." Han turned to Sue with anger on his face. "You named the engine? And what are these new connection points? They're not drawing maximum power." "They're not hurting her anymore," Sue replied calmly. "And she's giving more power willingly than you ever took by force." "This is outrageous," one of the other inspectors said. "The human has compromised our technology." "Show them, Yuri," Sue said softly. The dragon's colors brightened dramatically. Suddenly the lights throughout the ship glowed brighter. The engine's hum deepened and strengthened. On screens around the room, power readings spiked higher than the inspectors had ever seen. "What is happening?" Han asked, his anger now mixed with confusion. "Yuri is showing you what's possible when you work with dragons instead of enslaving them," Sue explained. "She's giving her power freely. And she's not alone," Tay added. "Right now, 13 other dragons in the fleet are doing the same thing." "Inspector." Han's communication device beeped urgently. When he checked it, his face paled. "This is impossible. We're getting reports of power surges on multiple ships. The Swift Justice, the Radiant Star, the Iron Will, all showing unusual energy patterns." "The dragons are communicating with each other," June said, joining them in the engine room. "They've been able to do that all along, but you never knew because you never tried to communicate with them." "This is some kind of attack," Han said, backing toward the door. "The human has sabotaged our fleet." "It's not an attack," Captain Day said firmly. "It's a demonstration. Look at the readings. Our ship is running better than ever, and there's something else you should see." He nodded to Tay, who activated the main screen. It showed the weapon systems coming online one by one. "The weapons are working again?" Han asked, confused. "Yuri has agreed to power them," Sue explained. "Not because she's forced to, but because she's been asked. Because she's been treated with respect and given a choice." Han shook his head. "Dragons don't make choices. They're power sources, not crew members." "You're wrong," Tay said quietly. "They've been crew members all along. We just didn't know." The second inspector, who had been quiet until now, looked thoughtful. "The power readings are impressive," she admitted. "I've never seen efficiency like this." "Imagine what the entire fleet could do with this kind of power," June suggested. "The High Council would never accept this," Han insisted. "The High Council wants power," Day countered. "We're offering them more power than they've ever had, just with a different approach." The debate continued for hours. The inspectors argued, questioned, examined the data, and contacted their superiors. Throughout it all, Yuri maintained her bright glow, showing what was possible. Finally, late in the day, a message came directly from Admiral Gill. "The High Council has convened an emergency session," he told them, his face serious on the screen. "The 13 ships showing these energy patterns are being ordered to Homeworld for immediate examination. Captain Day, you will explain this situation personally." "Yes, Admiral," Day agreed. After the call ended, Han looked at Captain Day with a mix of anger and reluctant respect. You may have started a revolution, Captain. Or the next step in our evolution, Day replied. 3 months later, Sue stood in the engine room of the Eternal Flame, saying goodbye to Yuri. The dragon's colors swirled in patterns that Sue now understood as clearly as spoken words. I'll miss you too, Sue said, placing her hand on the chamber wall, but you'll do great things together. Captain Day entered the room, wearing his formal uniform with a new insignia, the mark of the Dragon Communication Division, a small unit, created to explore the new partnership between Kangpai and dragons. The shuttle is ready to take you back to Rigel 9, he told Sue, unless you've changed your mind about staying. Sue shook her head. I've done what I came to do. The dragons can communicate for themselves now. They don't need me as a translator anymore. Tay joined them, carrying Sue's bag of tools. Thanks to you, 37 ships have now converted to the new system. The old guard is still fighting it, but they can't argue with the results. The new connection points designed by Sue and Tai had become the standard. Dragons across the fleet were now treated as valuable crew members rather than just power sources. Some captains still resisted the change, but more converted every day as they saw the benefits. The Confederation is changing, Day said. Slowly, but it's changing. The High Council has approved a test of completely voluntary dragon partnerships on 5 new ships. And the weapons? Sue asked. Most dragons agree to power defensive systems when asked respectfully, Tay explained. They understand the need for protection. But they have limits on what they'll power, and we're learning to respect those limits. Sue smiled, looking up at Yuri one last time. Who would have thought that the mighty Kangpai would learn something so important from humans and dragons? The greatest power comes from working together, Dai said. He had repeated this phrase many times in his reports to the High Council. It was becoming something of a new philosophy among younger Kangpai. As Sue prepared to leave, Yuri's colors formed one last message on the screen. Sue read it and laughed. What did she say? Tay asked. She said, come back when you need another ship fixed, Sue translated. The 3 of them walked to the shuttle bay together. The Eternal Flame hummed around them with clean, strong energy, the sound of willing partnership rather than forced labor. Will you really not stay? Tay asked as they reached the shuttle. There are hundreds more ships that could use your help. Sue smiled and shook her head. The dragons know what to do now. They're teaching each other, and you're learning to listen. That's the real fix, learning to listen to each other. She picked up her bag and walked toward the waiting shuttle. At the door, she turned back one last time. Besides, she called, to Tay and Day, I heard there's a Zeveran trade ship at Rigel 9 with engine problems. They use captured stars for power. Maybe they need someone to remind them that even stars have songs to sing, if you just learn how to listen. The shuttle door closed behind her, and Tay and Day watched as it departed from the Eternal Flame. She fixed more than our ship, Tay said quietly. Yes, Day agreed. She fixed our way of thinking. Throughout the ship, Yuri's energy flowed freely, powering systems that now worked in harmony with her natural rhythms. The Eternal Flame soared through space, no longer just a ship with an engine, but a true partnership between the crew and the magnificent being at its heart. And across the Kangpai fleet, dragons who had been silent for centuries began to speak, and for the first time their partners began to listen.